Hi, welcome back to Wild Speculations. I'm Daniel.
Scott.
This week we talk about Critical Role Campaign 2, Episode 118, Solace Between the Secrets.
Yeah.
Odd title name.
Mm-hmm.
And this was kind of a rough episode for me to get through. I don't know why.
But I got off work in time to pick up at the end of the break. So I saw the second half that night. But then I've just been busy and we've been short-staffed and stuff. And being the salaried guy, I get to pick up a lot of the slack. So I actually didn't get to see the first half until this morning.
Yeah.
First thing this morning.
Yeah. And I fell asleep when they were after the Blue Dome. I fell asleep Thursday night.
Okay.
And I watched it. I had it on Friday at work, but I was able to pay even less attention than I normally am. But yeah, it was. And part of me worries that my issue with it is the travel mechanic. And I say it worries me because it's how I like to run travel.
Gotcha.
It's very similar to how I like to run travel. And I hope it is a situation that is much different when you are at the table rolling the dice than watching it unfold.
For me, I mean, there was a few things in the episode. You know, there's some growth, some story development. But for the most part, it seemed like a prolonged montage.
Yeah.
Was kind of the vibe I was getting. But
yeah, I think that's fair. And I think part of that is the energy that they identified from the top of the episode. You know, they were all a bit punchy or what have you.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just that I've been exhausted and I get very little sleep as it is.
Yeah.
But even less so right now, and then the extra work. So I wasn't sure if it was just me or but yeah.
Well, perhaps it wasn't.
Perhaps it wasn't. We're sitting down and talking.
Some interesting rules discussion in the first quarter.
Yeah.
Which sort of came back to bite Matt when he had given them 2 levels of exhaustion. He thought, ha ha ha. You know, and they're like, well, we'll just polymorph. And oh, well, no, earlier in the episode I said flying creatures, the exhaustion doesn't transfer. So, okay. But yeah, when you change shape, your exhaustion doesn't follow.
Yeah.
So.
Which I was not really aware of, Yeah.
But yeah, because exhaustion.
Now, when you change back, do you have the exhaustion again?
Yes. Yes, all the exhaustion that was on you before is still there. It's just, it's a function of the physical body that you are in. So when you change shape into a different creature, it's a different system. Just like if you are poisoned and change shape, same thing.
Interesting.
But the poison condition is still on your former form. But Matt also kind of got wrong the flying travel rules for flying creatures. Flying creatures can fly for 3 hours before they have to rest. They have to rest for an hour, and then they can fly for 3 more hours, and then rest. So if you're on a flying mount, or you polymorph into a flying creature, or if a druid wild shapes into a flying creature, 3 hours of flight time.
True, but polymorph only lasts for an hour.
Yeah.
And if it's a new form, each time you cast the spell, the spell only takes what?
An action.
An action. They can get 8 hours in. Because they can't fly 3 straight hours to have to take the 1 hour rest. They're only ever flying an hour at a time.
Interesting possibility. But I would argue they are landing every hour.
Yeah.
Unless they fly
high enough that they can cast it midair.
1,000 or 1,500 feet in the air. But then you have the problem that
you have passengers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they would have to land every hour, but...
No, that's true.
I mean, they have to land every hour because the spell only lasts an hour.
Yeah. Well, they would have to have 8 4th level or higher spell slots to do that. Or 7 in the case of a transmutation wizard who can do it once for free.
Well, yeah. More when you're considering they're transforming 3 people.
Well, yeah. But Jester can only double cast it once.
Right.
Um,
but if Caleb is casting it and casting it on Yasha, that's 2 uses each hour.
But he can't do that.
Oh, because it's concentration. Yeah. So
you need a sorcerer with twin spell or 8 versions of that artifact.
Yep.
Yeah. But it is in the DMG, what I'm talking about. It's not just a house rule or anything. Because where impossible for my players to have flying speeds, I encourage it. And so you got to know these things. So I looked it up. And yes, Top Nader, we are using the most current winter art for their characters. My favorite quote at the beginning of the montage was, let's endanger ourselves needlessly, or something like that.
Yes.
When they're talking about sledding on shields.
Yes. Sam's the only one who hasn't seen one of them. Actually, my kids watched it the other day, so I have.
Yeah.
That's a great movie.
It is. I don't know if I want to read into Caleb's second polymorph of that day. When he notices the regifting of the amulet of proof against detection. When Jester asks, "Hey, where'd you get that?" "Oh, Ford gave it to me." And the next time he polymorphs into a bird
and shits on him.
Well, he lands on Ford. And then Ford puts him on Bo, and then he shits. So I don't know if I should read into that or not. That he was loading up to shit on Ford.
I think he was. My headcanon is yes.
But yeah, it's one of those things in the episode. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And we see the raw power of reliable talent.
Yeah.
In that it saved Beth more than once in that sledding trip.
Yeah. And talking to her, I think Caleb was happy either way. We also see Bo planning her wooing of Yasha. Now, see, I think if I had been Matt when she asks, "Are there any hardy northern flowers?" I would have said, "Make a perception check." Whatever she rolled, wouldn't matter what the number was. I'd say, yeah, you see a spiked bush.
Yeah.
Conical flowers.
Yeah, I would have. I would have given
Give
it
her
to
a pine cone.
Well, I would have just given her something, pine cone, anything, just to let the scene play out.
Yeah.
Um.
Yeah, I think I would have given her. There's a pine cone, but I would have described it in such a way that at first they would have been like, "What flower is that?"
Yeah.
And then finally, when they're like, "No, really, what is this?" It's a pine cone. Oh. And then I would have laughed. And they would have been mad at me for wasting our time. But
technically, you wouldn't be wrong. Which is the best kind of right.
Yeah. What do you think Bo was going to ask Caleb to do?
Adjoining rooms.
Yeah. And watching it, when Caleb kind of goes like that, part of me wonders if he is now sneaking into the design of the tower a trapdoor above Bo's bed. Or below. It'd be below.
It'd be above Yasha's bed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's either that or move Caduceus a floor up and Bo a floor down. I don't think that's going to happen because, as we discussed when the tower was first, he doesn't want that high perception any closer than it has to be.
Yeah.
To his private areas.
Yeah. So yeah, that was okay. We're on the same page then, because I was like, it has to be that she's going to ask for a way into Yasha's room, or something. Yeah.
Get the hailstorm.
Yeah.
And that racks them.
Yeah, it does. And the way Matt implemented it was interesting to me. Because he gave them the travel day. And then the next day is when the exhaustion hit them. And rather than giving them, you fail, you now have 3 levels of exhaustion, or 2 if you succeed. It was, if you failed, you got 2 the next day, and if you succeeded, you got 1.
Yeah.
which does wreck them.
Because only Yasha succeeded.
Yeah. Well, so let me ask you this. Did Matt actually leave it open for them to stop travel?
Yes. He gave them the option right away. He said, if you're going to do it now. It's Dagon. And if Caleb had done it right then and there and they went in, they wouldn't have gotten it.
Okay. Because
now, when they went back out the door, they may have been covered in ice.
I thought it was too fast. It was very, like, should I throw up the dome? He didn't allow for discussion. Nobody else in the group got input. He went directly into asking for the con saves. There was no...
Okay. I mean,
like, to me, there was no real opportunity for them to say, no, we'll spend the day in the mansion. But, I mean, it cost them a day of travel any way you slice it, whether they stay in the tower or they're just slowed.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Matt is calculating mileage, like in any accurate sense. Because that's one of the things that I right now, in my Wednesday night game, they're traveling back, and they don't necessarily know it, but they're against the ticking clock. One player has an inkling, because he's an oracle, and I gave him a vision. But he has decided not to share the vision with anyone else. And
sounds about right.
And doesn't deem it worthy to step on the gas a little bit. So they're just sort of traveling at a normal pace. So I'm keeping track of how many miles a day they make. Because I have this first thing I ask, what pace are you setting? Okay. We make the checks if they find an encounter or not. We deal with that. And then the next thing is, do you want to continue after 8 hours? And thus far, the answer has been no. So, because I give them a number of miles that they have to traverse, instead of it's this many days. How Matt does it. And the flying creatures, the giant eagles, speed of 80, they make 8 miles in an hour at a regular pace.
Yeah.
Which is twice what a fast pace walking will give them. So it's a significant speed boost on their travel day doing that. So I just wonder if Matt's keeping that fidelity of distance. And it's also muddled by the fact that they're traveling with a ranger.
Yeah.
So even if he wanted to say, your movement through this terrain is half speed, they're not. Which I think for narrative reasons, that makes a lot of sense for him to have done that.
Right.
Because it keeps everything flowing. It prevents the feeling of trudging.
Right.
That you kind of want to flirt with when you're in a survival situation. But to me, the base rules of D&D are incompatible with that survival aspect. Because you heal automatically to full hit points at the
Yeah.
end of a long rest. You can just spend hit dice on a short rest.
Which is why almost all of our games use the
slow natural healing and gritty healing. Yeah. Because if you're gonna have any kind of survival element, you need it. And also it means where he had to use exhaustion in this, if you're doing slow healing and gritty healing, damage is now just as effective as exhaustion. Because it will take them days to recover from that fully.
Yeah.
So speaking of weather, it's a good thing no one in the group has Druidcraft.
Yeah. The overlooked use of Druidcraft.
Yeah.
Most people just use it to create pretty flowers.
I don't think Keyleth once. I can't think of an instance in Campaign 1 once where she checked the weather. What the weather was going to be like.
I want to say there was once, but I can't pinpoint it.
Yes, I think it was. There was once, and it was when they were on the sky ship. I think from Amon.
Yeah. When they were going to Vasselheim.
Yeah.
And I knew there was. Didn't know. I was like 60% sure there was a time.
But yeah, I think that's the only time she ever used it.
Yeah.
But because Matt has made the weather part of his random encounter table, like, that would throw a huge wrench into it.
Yeah.
If someone says, I'm going to cast Druidcraft, what's the weather going to be like tomorrow? Oh, well.
To be fair, that's the weather where you're at, not the weather all over the planet. And you can be in Phoenix, get here, and it all of a sudden be raining. It may not be raining in Phoenix, and when you cast Druidcraft in Phoenix, it didn't say it was going to be raining. But by the time you get to Prescott, it's raining.
Fair. Okay. That's a little tiptoey, dancy, but I buy that.
So, because I do believe the spell states in your location. So where you're at when you cast the spell, that's what the weather's going to be like for the next 24 hours there.
Yeah. I think you're right. Also, I'm wondering if, because I often, when I do random encounters, I will roll a d8 to determine in what hour of the travel day the encounter is going to happen. Where, because Matt has made the weather component part of it, because arguably it seems that many of the things in the north bring the weather with them.
Yes.
It's the Game of Thrones White Walkers kind of thing. Do they come with the winter or do they bring the winter?
Right.
So, and when we've had bad weather, it's sort of thematic and harbinges bad things to come. So, which is why when Matt said the sky is really dark, and Travis is like, "Oh, great."
Yep.
So, but I don't think he does that. I don't think he determines what part of the day these things happen.
Yeah.
And that's a tip for you guys if you want to try to, because sometimes if it's a rough fight or whatever, and your players want to just say, okay, we're going to set up camp. It's like, yeah, but you've only been on the road for 3 hours.
Right. Or vice versa, if they're doing something like these guys are doing and using up all their slots for polymorph, and the fight happens later in the day, they have that many fewer resources to complete the fight with.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So.
Which they sort of had a moment in this episode, and Matt's like, no, you're going to spend the polymorph, and then we'll talk about the weather.
Yeah.
Because it was that kind of thing. So, I think Matt could get around that if he did that.
Yeah.
But we have the Ring of Statues.
Yes.
Which...
Well, we have several sendings before we get to the Ring of Statues.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's right.
We contact Yeza and check in. Yeza's the same. Always seems more relieved when they're checking in than when they're there in person. And I stand by my statements from the last time we talked about Yeza that he is growing more and more uncomfortable with the Mighty Nine. And the effect that they are having on his life.
Yeah.
He seems fine. He's in, Luke's got a crush. Great. He's growing up. Somewhere between 3 and 13. And it's great because 3 years old. Okay, every kid in preschool, which 3 years old is a preschool age. I taught preschool. Depending if they're special needs or not, it can be anywhere from 2 to 5. They get crushes a lot.
Oh, yeah.
A crush is not a big deal for a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many 3-year-olds have asked me to marry them when I was a teacher. That's not an uncommon thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. And my headcanon for Veth not being sure how old Luke is, like, Sam doesn't know. Because I don't know if Sam wrote it down in a concrete manner when he gave Matt his backstory.
I think that's true.
And to me, that she doesn't know exactly how old he is perfect for the curse that she was under.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was going to say.
And the fact that she's been gone.
Well, and the fact that, if you look at the age spans and the aging of a halfling compared to a goblin, the time she spent as a goblin and the aging she did as a goblin would seem so much more vast of time as a halfling. Because goblins age so much faster.
Yeah.
And die so much quicker. She could spend a third of a lifetime as a goblin, but it's
nothing for a
halfling.
Yeah.
And so I think that, that's my headcanon. That's what's messing with her, is the time dilation between the lifespans.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we contact Kitari, who may or may not have taken levels in Artificer. Or at least gained proficiency in Tinker's tools.
Yeah. Well, racially, they're expert forgers, so
there you go.
It makes sense that she starts building things.
Yeah.
My worry is that either the family she's living with or somebody that they know is exploiting her.
Tinkertop.
Yeah.
That would be my guess.
Yeah. So, yeah. That's my worry there.
Yeah.
Also, like, the fact that she contacted Curie is because of Caleb.
Mm-hmm.
And we see the school of Trent Ickathon manipulation showing there. Because she's asking for names. He could have said, you could contact Kiri. He doesn't do that. He waits until everyone else has suggested. And then at dinner, he puts up a scene of Hubbard.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm going to contact Kiri.
Yeah. And there's not really much from their time in Hubbard.
No.
There's Kiri. There's Beth's crossbow.
And Bo's obsession with fireworks.
There's fireworks. And there's the stunt that Molly pulled on the guard gate.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Yeah.
Oh, and them getting robbed, but
yeah.
So really the only reason to do that is to bring up Kiri.
Yeah. And so yeah, and that's why I can't view the Puffin incident without wondering.
You have to assume that it is, unless specifically stated otherwise. One, because of the type of player Liam is, he doesn't do things without a reason.
Yeah.
He has a plan.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be a long con like Sam, or it may not be based on history of random knowledge about the game like Taliesin.
Yeah.
But Liam always has a plan, and there's always a method to his madness.
Yeah, and every time that he polymorphs, that he does something, like when he did the Orca with Jester,
Mm-hmm.
and he allows the animalistic side to express his feelings.
Mm-hmm.
That as a human, as Caleb, he has to suppress.
He shuts.
Yeah,
exactly.
And he lands on Ford and starts pecking at him.
Mm-hmm.
Motherfucker, you gave her my necklace.
Yep, exactly. And it's exactly what went through my head when that scene happened, when I saw that scene. But even down to look, if she ruffles her feathers, I put lightning bolts in her design in her feathers when I transformed Yasha.
Yeah.
Every little thing is, he's got way too much attention to detail.
Yeah.
To assume it was just a coincidence.
Yeah.
There's a reason why he specifically picks who he grabs the shoulder of and whatnot.
Yeah. We get more communication with the Cobalt Soul as well.
Yeah.
And
we go straight to the top this time.
Yes. Which bears fruit.
Yep.
Although I don't know, like part of me is like, we kind of already knew this, and I don't know. So much of what they do is like, yeah, we kind of knew that already.
Yeah.
And yeah, Top Manor, uselessly in love is pretty good. Yeah. But my favorite sending was Calliope.
Yes.
And specifically Talieson's response after it was over.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh man, I ruined it." He's like, "No, you communicated everything that needed to get across, and I kind of like the fact that they might be confused."
Yeah.
Kind of enjoying that.
Yeah.
It's probably better they don't know and get worried.
Yeah. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. If there was anything else.
No, I think that was it before we get to this circle of statues, which always brings exposition of some form or another. Whether it's Oblivion and the Statue of the Gods, or it's countless times in a Legend of Zelda game, you stand in the circle of statues and you get a cutscene.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's actually on a table in Xanathar's.
Mm.
I think.
It might be.
I would have loved to have checked, but somebody took my Xanathar's with them on Sunday. But anyway.
It wasn't me.
It was not you. I know. I'm pretty sure I know who it was.
I have mine.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the exact thing. Statues give information, and they take a D8. I think it's a D8 years. Age you a D8. Which was an interesting. It's an interesting exchange.
Yeah.
And yes, it is, and it's a great exposition outlet for the DM. And it is another case of they knew what the Tomb Takers were trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, what else was she going to do with that question? Well, at another time and place, she may have asked, how do I get my father and mother together?
Yeah.
Or what's keeping my father from going to...
I mean, we have a lot of open backstories.
Yeah.
You know.
But she chooses to ask about the city.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets a little more information. And specifically, she gets what arguably Caleb should have gotten. Because, and that's why Laura had to clarify. When I saw the Tomb Takers and they had all the things, was that in the future or now?
Yeah.
And Matt said, now, current. Caleb cast Detect Magic and looked at all of them. But Matt never mentioned sources of conjuration in their pockets or in their bags. Unless the knowledge that they are each carrying something came through a different medium. Where perhaps it's in a bag of holding that wouldn't have shown up to a Detect Magic. Or a haversack or some space that is going to be missed.
Wrapped in tinfoil.
But yeah, I that bit sort of dinged me a little bit because I was like, Caleb should have seen that unless it's in an extra dimensional space or something. So, and I suppose arguably it gave them better direction to formulate their questions for Vess.
Yes.
Which is the next major thing.
Right. Talking.
And we have it on while we're show prepping. And I turn to you and I go, I thought they had all of Vess.
Mm-hmm.
Why? And Taliesin kept talking about her head. When we talked to the head. I was like, did I miss something? Did they cut her head off?
Not that I'm aware of. Pretty sure they just put her back in the amber.
Yeah. They have the head of the drow.
Yes.
And all of Vess. So I'm wondering if the question of raising her comes up. Technically, the head is enough for the spell. I think the head is enough.
Yeah.
You just need something of the body. So even if they wanted to raise her with just her head, it would still work. But we learn why Vess was doing this, because she wanted to join with the minds and become one and get all the power. And that they are the leaders of the borough.
Neighborhood, yeah.
That they betrayed the city.
Well, we only found out for sure that they saved themselves when the city went down. It was postulated that they betrayed the city to save themselves.
Well, that's what Vess said, though. That they betrayed to save themselves.
Okay.
The nature of that betrayal is unknown.
Got it.
It's unlike, did they betray them to the gods, to the evil gods, or did they just bounce? And that was the betrayal. They took their portion of the city and ran, and that caused the rest of it to collapse.
Right.
Or break up, or whatever.
Plummet downward.
Yeah. We learned that the crests were broken in a storm. This is very quick, single line.
Yep.
But I was like, ooh, a storm. Which is in line with a lot of mythologies. Great storm destroying cities. It also is a good explanation of why Aor and pieces of it are all over the place. That this storm was so powerful that it flung it everywhere.
Yeah, the city was ripped up and dispersed by the storm.
Yeah. We once again have the debate in the party. Is Essek to be trusted? Is he evil?
I think the answer is yes to both. Just because you're evil doesn't mean you can't be trusted, especially if you're working towards the same goal.
Yeah.
There are, look at Ford. Look at Caleb.
Yeah. I just, like Caleb saying, I don't want to whet his appetite.
Oh, yeah.
For this power. And I think it was Travis, wasn't it? Or was it Taliesin, who was like, he's up here.
That was Taliesin.
He's up here for that reason.
Yeah.
Like, his appetite is wet already. And at top leader, I think he wants the same kind of power that, well, I was going to say that Vess wanted, but Vess sort of got mixed up in the culty aspect. We don't have evidence that Essek is wrapped up in that.
No.
But he definitely wants the power that Magocracy had.
Yes.
So I don't know. I don't think Matt would do it, but it is prime for a betrayal.
Yeah. especially not after Joe Manganiello in the last campaign.
Well, that was a guest star though. Guest stars' betrayals are.
But that was, you know, that he talked to Matt about that. You don't think he talked to Matt about that?
No, because Matt was shocked that he did it, and Matt was like, oh, okay. So, yeah, no, I don't think he talked to Matt about that at all.
Oh yeah.
I
don't think he talked to Matt about the specifics, but I think Matt knew that was the end goal, was that he was going to take off with it. His end, that Joe's main goal was to take off with the hand.
I can't argue against that. Or at least that he wanted something that would help Tiamat.
Yeah.
But we have arguably the end of Widow Jest. Toffinator, yeah. Caleb betraying them to get the power for his goal. I think might be dangled in front of him, and those statues were certainly an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was a big deal that Caleb didn't step into the circle.
Yeah. Although I think the growth we've seen in Caleb, I don't think he would take it. He might be tempted, but I don't think he'd betray them like that.
If it meant that he could get his mother and father back?
I think he's on his way moving past that already.
I don't think so.
He hasn't brought it up in a long time.
Because I think it's a secret hope of his. There's certainly no mechanics in the game to support it. It would have to be something Matt's going to make up out of whole cloth. And would have interesting and potentially terrible ramifications. But I think it's Caleb's pie in the sky dream. But if the possibility is spelled out in front of him, if you do this, you can get your mother and father back and undo all of it, the bad in your life. I don't know if he is if he's in a position not to take that.
Veth and Jester. Those are the reasons he doesn't take it.
Yeah.
Now, if they've fallen and when he gets tempted, yeah, he'll screw the rest of them over. But if they're still up, he's not going to do it.
Okay. And see, I think
that's my call.
I think the solution for Caleb preserving his parents and the timeline is a flashpoint situation.
Yeah.
Where he goes back and makes past Caleb believe he killed his parents, but he saves them from the fire.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting for the moment where they go to look for the bodies, and they're not there. They can't find the bodies.
Yeah.
For Matt to dangle that as the possibility.
I don't know that that's going to
happen. I doubt it, but you know. But Ford makes his move on Jester, and like in the moment, I was like, "Boo!" And then after, I was like, "Okay, that's yay." Okay, cool.
I'm torn.
And then when she's like, I just look at the unicorn, and I like in my head, I'm like, in the bed that Caleb made for me, with the painting behind the unicorn.
I totally respect the scene. I think in the moment he was being honest and true. I think in the next episode or two, we're going to see him be dismissive or an asshole again. And
I don't think so. I think in the next episode, we are going to see Ford do things he hasn't done in a very long time, which is get in melee and keep that thing from Jester. But I don't think it's gonna. That thing is, Toughnir. So the reason I was going boo at that scene is because, to me, nothing, well, very little has been set up.
Yeah.
For that. Ford didn't have, like, he had that little thing with Bo talking about her crush on Jester so that he would admit to having one.
Mm-hmm.
And he got her the unicorn. But, like, I don't know.
Well, his reasoning was that it was the first time he wanted to save her and didn't do anything, is what he said. And I don't know that I buy that.
Yeah.
I buy it to a degree. I think, and this may be my cynicism of Ford's alignment bleeding through, and I'm 99% sure it is. But it's almost like I'm going to take this step because I don't want to lose face for not doing the other thing. I'm not saying he doesn't have real feelings for her. I'm saying he's not the altruistic type.
Okay. But I expect for him to put himself in a position so that Yasha and Beauregard can make proper use of their Sentinel ability. Because they haven't been able to do that because no one else ever gets in melee with whatever they're fighting. Except for the two of them.
I'm not sure.
Also, I expect that thing is off the bat. It has some sort of stun or frightened condition that it's going to lay out on everybody. Not dissimilar to the worm that they fought.
Right.
Where it came out, let out the scream, make a con save, stunned if you fail it for 1 minute or until you save.
Yeah.
And now I'm just going to beat you and tear you apart with my little baby hands. I don't know if he has a better con mod, so it's not impossible.
What?
Toughnir says that Caleb has more health than Veth.
Yeah.
I think Veth rolled a 2 or 3 on the last level up, and Caleb rolled, I think, a 6.
Yeah.
It's not impossible.
It's not impossible. Because he does have, I think, a 16 con.
Yeah.
So, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
So
just from the modifier alone, it could make the difference.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. I expect more of the same from Ford. I don't know.
So last few minutes.
Yeah.
Next week. 80, 90, 96. Yeah. That monster is a third-party source.
Yes.
I remember when Matt mentioned it, and he bought a few of their minis.
Right.
I do not have that source book.
Nor do I.
So I'm grabbing at straws. But I think that monster probably had, like I say, it's either got a stun ability or some other ability to incapacitate creatures.
Yeah.
Or hypnotize them or something.
Yeah.
And I imagine it has, if it attacks and hits, you're grappled. Just because of all the hands. It is in line with the mutated cherub we saw in campaign 1. Thematically, anyway.
Yeah.
So I think we have 2 more rooms at least. After, if they survive the baby thing. And I think one of them will probably be a puzzle room.
Okay.
And I think we're going to have another severe altitude change to get to the next place. That seems to be a theme in these Ruins of Aor dungeons. I don't think we will see the kind of squeezing challenge that was in the first place. I don't think. Otherwise, because like, if the ruin within was difficult to traverse, like the other one, they wouldn't have hidden the entrance.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think it's easy to get in and out and to move around. It's just dangerous down here. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think we're going to see Ford get up in the middle of it. I think he'll be fine blasting, standing halfway between it and Jester. And if Jester can pull off her Rancor idea,
that's not gonna work.
You don't think so?
It's cute, but no, it's not gonna work. Because the encounter has been triggered. Whatever it was that made those doors open and close, there's another piece to that just hitting that other button's not going to close. There's something else that's got to be done to close the door, and by that point, it's not going to do you any good.
So they'll just turn it into a turtle.
She may try, or Caleb may try, but I don't think it's going to work. I think it has magic resistance. Or maybe it has, like, Golem's the immutable form. Yeah. So, just because something that horrific, if it could be polymorphed and done away with, it would have.
Yeah.
They had the apprentice of the lewdness. or the Martinet.
Yeah.
Down here, and she's got to be 13th to 15th level.
True.
Wizard. With her attendants.
Yeah.
Which fell victim to this thing. So, but that's all the time we have for tonight. We will see you guys next week, where we will be discussing episode 119, titled TBD.
I guess.